Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. Our guest this week is Kim Adams. Now, Kim exemplifies how our life can have so many twists and turns, and that in midlife, it's far from over with so many opportunities still left to explore. And as you'll hear, Kim's led an incredibly interesting and full life. It started early when she left school to become a hairdresser at 15, and then in her early 20s, deciding to return to studies to complete a degree in psychology, a master's in management, as well as beginning a PhD before giving up the books. Kim worked for 20 years in law enforcement organisations, reaching middle management level. And even though she was ambitious and outwardly confident, she was an introvert masquerading as an extrovert, enjoying a fast-paced life that was hiding chronic anxiety and contributing to an eating disorder. When the job she loved disappeared due to an organisational restructure, she felt her identity, value and sense of belonging disappeared. And she followed a calling to spend several months working as a volunteer, teaching English to teenagers in Bali. This time also revitalised her love of yoga and the process of finding more meaning and purpose, but with less anxiety. And now Kim works as an anxiety coach and yoga teacher, working mainly with midlife women who want to ditch their self-limiting beliefs and find more calm and confidence. I hope you enjoy our fascinating conversation. Welcome to the Redefining Midlife podcast, Kim. I'm really looking forward to our chat today and learning more about you and what you do and how you've come to where you are right now, which is an incredible journey. As I've mentioned in the intro, you've had a very interesting life. And like most women of this age, you've had lots of stories and lived through so many experiences. So welcome.
Thank you, Jo. It's so lovely to be here. And yes, I think we've all had our journeys. It's a bit of an overused word these days, but we certainly have all had our journeys. And it's not until you pause and look back that you can surprise yourself on all the things that you've done. And it's actually a really good thing to do because it's like, wow, I've done all that. Some of that went really well, some not so much, but it is such an interesting journey we all have by the time we get to this age.
For sure, because the good will take you to a certain place and the bad will take you to a certain place, but it always gets you to where you need to be eventually. And you sometimes wonder at the time when you're sitting in that big pile of poo, why on earth is it happening? But it always does seem to work itself out for a reason. You learn so much from it.
And often, as I know we get told, but it's hard to remember when we're in the midst of it, often those not so good things happen to actually point us in the better direction in the middle of it. And especially if you're like me at all, I like to, get my own way and I'm trying to force something to happen and it doesn't work out that way. I feel like it's wrong or I've failed, but looking back, it was just nudging me in the right direction. And I'm really glad that maybe what I was pushing for didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm the same because and the women I talk to have the same outlook as well. And I think you just need to remind yourself every now and then that that's the case.
If a door closes, then another one will open.
Another one will open, yeah.
Patience.
That's it. You might have to open a few of those doors before you're happy where you are, but it'll always get you there eventually.
And sometimes we run screaming back through that door, but we get there.
Slamming them along the way. Yeah. So, Kim, I'm going to rewind the clock back to see how much things have changed for you over the years. So tell us about when you were growing up and what did you think your life was going to look like then?
I grew up in the country in the Atherton Tablelands up in far north Queensland. So I was a country girl, grew up on a farm. I always thought back then I was going to be a vet, as I think a lot of young, particularly country children think they're going to be. So for a long time, I wanted to be a vet. And then by the time I got to high school, I wanted to be a police officer, but I am only 5 foot tall, 153 centimetres.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, there were height restrictions to be a police officer, which I thought was, I didn't know what diversity and inclusion was back then, but I knew I was being left out and it wasn't fair. So I couldn't become a police officer. Then I dropped out of high school at year 10 because I think, as the principal said to my mother, Kim's halo has fallen from above her head to her ankles, and she was going down just normal naughty teenage stuff, nothing major. But I decided I was going to leave school and be a hairdresser, which I did. And I did my hairdressing qualifications, and that was fun. I mean, being a hairdresser as a teenager is, the best job. It's all talking and style and fashion and all that sort of stuff. And then when I had my children, when they were babies, I decided that, I actually was really good at academics, as I was being told when I was told not to leave school, and that I did want to go and do something a bit more with my life. And that's how I got into doing my psychology degree. So I did that while I had 3 children. I started it when I had 3 children under 4 years old. Wow. So
that's huge.
It was. I do not know how I did it now.
That's it. So you had 3 children under 4, which meant you had your children at quite a young age. Is that right?
Yes, I had my first at 21.
Right. And how did you juggle that motherhood at a younger age with study, with everything else that happens at life when you've got kids?
I think, as I mentioned before, I can get a bit determined, and I think that's one of my strengths, is if I do decide I want something, I do go in all. I jump right in and nothing will get in my way, which is probably why I was being a bit naughty at high school. But I turned that on a positive slant after I started having my children. And it was really, to be honest, I wanted to leave the country and head to the city. It was that old country, get away from the country, the small town, head to the city. And I wanted something more for my life, I guess. And I wanted to use my skills and my intelligence and my curiosity to explore things that I probably hadn't had any exposure to, but I always knew that there was more, and I wanted to go find that.
Yeah, good on you. So then from that point in time, you went on to do a master's in management and followed that up by starting a PhD in criminal justice, and that was looking at focusing on domestic violence. So you decided that study was for you and you wanted to go further there. But what took you on to that area of domestic violence? What was that something of interest to you?
Yes, so my psychology degree took me into organisational psychology. So really going down that organisational performance improvement path. And then as things sort of work out, I couldn't become a police officer, but my first job was working for the Australasian Centre for Policing Research in Adelaide. So that got me definitely out of the country, and off I went down to Adelaide from far north Queensland, and could not believe how bloody cold it was.
So I got to send you to Canberra then.
Oh goodness, it was. I went in August as well, so you can imagine little me getting off the plane with my basically t-shirt and jeans, I think, so that was a shock to the system, and living in the big city also. But that allowed me to immerse myself in policing from the back end of policing, the policy, the strategy, the management, how they made decisions on how they would deploy police officers, what sort of equipment they would use, what sort of procedures and policies and health and safety. So I did research for policing across Australia from that role. And one of my multiple projects I had there were around women in policing. Focusing on sexual harassment and bullying for women, and then a project looking at women in leadership in policing.
What year would that have been, Kim? Like what time of?
Oh gosh, that was 90s.
Wow, so that would have been fairly cutting edge. Even back then. It's well talked about now, but back then, very early days.
Back then, it was very new, and particularly in policing, which, as you can imagine, is quite a male-dominated industry. Even more so then than it is now. But I still, I'll get there. I'll go on a tangent if I head off, but I'll stay focused on that. So started doing a lot around women police officers. So the focus was on that. And then I got into the domestic violence, or the response to domestic violence. I then moved back to Queensland to work for the Queensland Police Service. And again, these things fall in your lap and they all seem to connect, I got another project looking at the response of policing to domestic violence.
Mm.
And I moved over to the Crime and Misconduct Commission as a researcher there and undertook a large body of work on the criminal justice response to domestic violence.
Right.
That was a very large research project in partnership with Queensland Police, and it resulted in a number of recommendations and changing to how police did respond to domestic violence at the time. And that was back in 2004, I think.
Right.
So that's how it all kind of, I wasn't chasing domestic violence work, but everywhere I went, that was kind of the work I was getting involved in.
Gotcha.
And that's when I started my PhD. And a year into that, I realised, yes, I was really overstudy. I didn't want to spend every weekend doing more study. And was it actually where I wanted to go with my career? Like for a PhD, did I want to work in academia? Did I need it for advancement? The answer was no. So I thought, yeah, it's time to step away from the study. I want to do other things.
Yeah. And so what the other things, what was that for you then?
Health and fitness has always been a priority in my life. And I think back then during my 20s, 30s, even into 40s, it was very much around body image, wanting to be skinny, wanting to look good. So the fitness was really driven by that, which sort of resulted in probably some not so healthy relationship with my own body and relationship with eating, becoming extremely strict with exercise and eating and measuring body fat and measuring weight in a very, what I thought was a super fit, healthy way at the time, but really was not healthy at all.
It was one of those things though, wasn't it? And I've talked to other guests before. It was really a part of that time when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s, that whole measuring the calories, the books, there was so much that was highlighted on what you should be doing, and the diet culture was massive.
Oh, I would count the almonds that I ate for morning tea to make sure, it wasn't too much fat. And, looking, when you're in the midst of it, you think you are in control and, looking good and doing everything right, and can be quite judgmental about others who aren't, because you're so immersed in that sort of mindset. So, yeah, it was not healthy though, but it was all part, I think, of that time in my life where I was really trying to control a lot, not realizing there was a lot of anxiety sitting under my drive and my ambition and my desire to achieve, a desire to look a certain way. It all sort of really was being fed by an underlying anxiety that I didn't realize at the time.
Okay. And what do you think was a cause of that anxiety? I mean, it obviously manifested in the ways you just described. What was there anything that you can look back now and go, oh, that's why
Look,
I
I
was
think
feeling that way?
there's always a combination of things, and it can be really useful to look back and identify if there were key things that have driven anxiety or depression or any sort of mental illness or psychological struggles. It can be good to look back and identify, but I also want to caution about getting stuck on trying to find why. However, I'd say partly personality, just my natural way of being. But I think also, and this isn't in a blaming way, but looking at parents and parenting styles that were driven also by how they were parented, and probably driving that need to want to belong in a family that I didn't feel I quite belonged, with parents who probably weren't very emotionally supportive. So my recognition was achieved by achieving A grades or getting the best in things. So I became quite driven to be perfect, which probably feeds into the body image stuff as well. And the desire, a fear of shame or humiliation by not being good enough, were some of the things that over time I've been able to unpack that were sort of driving that anxiety, and still can do today. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, once it sinks its teeth in, it's hard to let go at times, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how did that change the way that you or factored in how you parented your children, having come back, when you look at how you grew up Was that a big influence?
Oh, most definitely. And unfortunately, I probably didn't realize it when they were young,
Yeah.
looking back and wishing you'd done things a little differently. But I definitely can see how that, because you do learn from your parents how to connect with others and how to show affection. So if you haven't had that role modeled, it can be really difficult. So yeah, I was probably more of that task-driven mother. I would never say I was that overly motherly type. So I like to think I worked on it over the years, but I really wish I could have done that work on myself when I was young.
Yeah.
But again, I was doing so much that I didn't even have time to contemplate that at the time. I had the young children, I was studying, I started working as well. So I was just getting on with it rather than reflecting. And it's probably, maybe that's why we have these moments in midlife where we start to question things, because that's when you do get a little bit more time maybe to reflect back.
Yes.
You aren't trying to do it all, or when you decide, guess what, I don't have to do it all, and I'd like to now make some different choices.
Yeah, maturity and hindsight's a great thing, because you look back and you go, oh God, if only I could have that time over again. But you didn't. You did the best that you could do with what you had at the time. And I think if we take ourselves and give ourselves a little bit of grace at times as well, just, it's tough. Motherhood is tough. Add in all of those extra things that you would have had, that's a big lot.
And the personalities of different children interact differently with your personality too. So you can act a certain way with one child and have them blossom under that, whereas another child may not. So it's such a complex environment.
It is. And did you have a partner at that time to help you through that? Yeah.
Yes, I did. Yeah. Subsequently divorced, but during the children's younger years, probably till mid-primary school I did, but after that, no, I did it on my own for a while, which again puts added pressure on. And I think a lot of women, and men a lot of men who are single parents, it is very difficult, and you do have that constant battle of guilt and desire to provide, and also desire to advance your own career and look after the children, and there's never enough time, is there?
No, there's not. Now, so Kim, when you had the children and you left the policing job, that the work that you were doing there, and you were talking about your getting into fitness, and that, was that a career for you when you talk about that?
Look, I dabbled in a lot in my life, Jo. I'm
hearing stories what women do. It's fascinating.
I used to think I was fickle, but now I've heard this new term, multi-passionate, and I love that.
Oh, that sounds much better.
I love that. I was multi-passionate, Jo.
Yeah.
Good on you. I've tried many things, and I did do my personal training, and I did do health coaching certificate, but probably one of the underlying core things that came up and down throughout my life is yoga, which I started when I think I went to my first class when I was 17, and the teacher was probably at the time like 45, and I just thought she was the most elegant older lady. At the top, she was so graceful. She had this calm aura, and I remember thinking, oh, I just want to be like her. I could never be like her. So yoga started early and then came and went throughout my whole life. But during those, 20s, 30s, and even early 40s, it was again about the fitness side of yoga. And it wasn't until 2013, I think it was, that changes at work left me really feeling like, it was time to move on. I was feeling a bit lost in that space. I felt like I didn't belong like I used to. I was feeling like my value had dropped because of this change. And then my difficulty to manage that, because that's when the anxiety and a bit of depression started to bubble up. Once I slowed down a bit, it was like that was when it came up. And so I went off and did a yoga retreat in Bali with a wonderful lady, Australian lady, Violetta. And that triggered yoga for me in a whole different way, really around the psychology of yoga, Buddhist psychology principles, also the Balinese spirituality, and yoga became much more to me. And that's when I did my yoga teacher training with Violetta in Bali. So yoga has become a tool that I love to use for myself and with other people to not only keep their body fit and healthy and strong and flexible, but as a tool for managing anxiety, managing overwhelm, creating focus. So I think the yoga for me has been something that's always been there, and now is more so, and something that I can use for other people.
Yeah, it is an incredible practice, and it's something that I've had in my life for a while. I'm certainly not as serious at practicing. Once or twice a week is what I love to do and aim to do. But it's
plenty.
It's not as much as what it can do for your body. But as you were saying, it's also that mind release, that time for yourself, the breathing, the pranayama that you're able to do throughout that, and just letting go. I think we're so fixated on what you think you should be looking like. Or people, that's why some people, particularly women, are sometimes afraid or reticent to go into a class because they think they have to look a certain way, be flexible to a certain level, and there's just so many. Probably
that's when the competition comes out, like even when you're not meaning it to.
Yeah.
And I know I do that myself, even though I can walk into a class somewhere and I'll go, I'm just going to do my own thing. And then the person next to you starts doing something amazing, and it's like, oh, maybe I should be doing that too. But I think that's the cornerstone. So my yoga, I do very limited yoga group classes, 1 or 2 a week on my deck. It's a private space. It's a beautiful space decorated with all beautiful decor from my travels in Southeast Asia, which I love. We put candles on, and it's a really non-judgmental space for people to come. And I guess my biggest approach to it is that this is for you. It's your body. We're here for you to do what you need to do. I'm here to guide you through that and make sure you don't hurt yourself. But it's your body, and that's what yoga is. It's about union of the body, mind, and breath. And so that's what it's all about. And I love it when I get feedback from people saying that they've stopped going to yoga because they felt so intimidated by going to larger yoga studios, especially if there was, with gyms. And there's nothing against it. It's fabulous that they have those classes, but those classes can often be full of people who are there for fitness reasons and do it as part of their fitness program, which is fabulous. But for a lot of women, particularly middle-aged women, it's not about that, and they feel intimidated, and they come here and they go, this is fantastic. I can just come and I feel so much lighter when I've finished, because this is a really safe space.
Yeah, that's very special that you're able to do that. Let's take a quick break. All of the changes in the middle of life can leave you exhausted and depleted. So I'd love to invite you to a very special free masterclass that's going to help you go from surviving to thriving before, during, and after the menopause transition. Now, there are way too many women in their 40s and 50s who are unsure about what to expect during the years of perimenopause and how they can best manage their symptoms and health before, during, and after this phase. But that doesn't have to be your story. I'd love you to join me for a free masterclass where I'll share 3 topics about the menopause transition that every woman should know, like what's happening to your body and why, the range of symptoms that you might experience, plus simple ways to support your body during and after the transition. Now, I've helped thousands of women learn more about the menopause transition and how to prioritise their well-being, and I'd love for you to learn more about this phase as well. Because when you know more, you'll feel less overwhelmed, more empowered and confident. The free masterclass is online via Zoom on Wednesday, the 12th of July, 11 a.m. or 7 p.m. You can register now by heading to joeclarkcoaching.com/thrive. Now, back to our episode. You mentioned your time in Bali, and that was a time where you went away when you were feeling that, probably not as mentally well. You also did some teaching over there as part of your time. So do you want to talk about that? That was also an interesting sideline that you've done.
Yes, that was me deciding, wow, that looks interesting. I'm going to go full on. So I decided, whilst it was starting to fall apart back here with my work and with my own mental health, that what I wanted to do was go and volunteer in Bali. I didn't know what for at that time, did a bit of research and decided, okay, teaching English to teenagers for someone who's never taught kids in their life, that sounds like fun. But being me, again, I didn't just go and do it. You didn't need any qualifications. I went and did a intensive Cambridge English teaching for adults certificate, which was one of, I mean, I've done my uni and my master's. This was next level difficult. It was so hard. It was 10-hour days. It was crazy. But anyway, I got my CELTA certificate to teach English to people who can't speak English as their native language, and went to Bali for a few months to live. And I lived in the community, and each day would teach English to teenagers. And it was the first week was very challenging. So I got there with my special certificate, with my worksheets and formats on how we're meant to do it. You know, this is a structured class and this is how you set it out. And it was nothing like that. It was sitting on a torn mat under a rusty old roof with a whiteboard or chalkboard that was half broken, with kids who would sometimes come, sometimes they couldn't because they had to help their parents out, or it was a ceremony day, so they didn't turn up till an hour late, or it was raining, so then it would flood, or there was no need to have class plans. You just had to go in, which for a person who likes to have everything structured, it was like, what, there's no plan? Just do it. So the first week I felt totally lost. I had a few tears. I thought, what am I doing here? I'm here on my own. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this. And then it really sunk in one day, and I was thinking about it, is that I was making it all about me. And this wasn't about me, actually.
So your own kids, Kim, your own kids were older enough then to be...
Yes, they were grown up. So this was,
This was your sojourn.
I was mid-40s by this point.
This is your Elizabeth Gilbert moment.
Yes, exactly. This was me going to Bali to teach beautiful classes that were structured and divine, and the children would love me, and they'd speak fluently after I'd been there. That was that moment. It wasn't like that. So, and I realized it wasn't about me. It was actually about them. Why was I there? I was there to help students who didn't have the funds to go to special English classes and who needed some English so that when they left high school or finished school, they often wouldn't finish fully high school, but when they left could get work in the hospitality industry, in the cafes and restaurants or hotels.
Yep.
Some would go on and do university. There was a couple in my class who actually did, but that's why I was there. It was actually for them. And what did they need? They didn't need me to have this special certificate and structured class plans. What they needed was me to be present and to talk to them, share with them, laugh with them, and have fun with them, because that's how we learn as a group. So that was the switch I had to make. And then the rest of the time was absolutely fabulous.
Yeah. And so you were doing, is that hand in hand with the time where you were doing your yoga training as well? Or is this a different time?
That happened, I've lost the timeline now. It was around the same period and I can't remember what came first. I think that the volunteering came first, and then I went back and did my yoga teacher.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So I did spend a lot of time traveling to Bali for a number of years there. I was back and forth several times a year, so that was wonderful.
Yeah, right. Huh.
Yeah.
It's a very special place for a lot of Australians, isn't it, to head over to Bali?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
a variety of reasons.
Yes, definitely.
And so, Kim, what did you do when you got back to Australia? After your time in Southeast Asia, what did you do then?
I did a bit of consulting work more in the leadership space, working with women in leadership, looking at executive presence, looking at communication skills. Actually, I went to the Solomon Islands for the Solomon Islands Royal Police Force and our federal police there, and did the inaugural women's strategy for the Solomon Islands Police Force, which again was like, yep, I can do that. Let's go.
Wow.
And that was because of my background in working with women in police leadership and the work I'd done there. So I was able to get that consulting job and go over there and do that research and development, and wrote that paper and set up their first women's strategy, which, it was a big deal for them. There was nothing looking at women's equity or rights or catering for women police officers in their organisation. And a lot of how the women police officers there were operating like we probably would have in the 50s. It was very very much they made the tea and did all that sort of thing, or were very limited in their ability to balance family and work. And it was a very difficult experience for them. So looking at how we could make that more an opportunity for women police officers in the Solomon Islands.
Well, you've done a huge amount when you've
I've forgotten about that. That just popped up. I was like, yeah.
When you're carrying on telling me all of these things and how you are introvert, how you're a self-proclaimed introvert, and you've dealing with lots on your plate, and bouts of mental ill health, and wow, you've done a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. This is therapy. I'm feeling much better about myself.
Well,
right
I'll give you the account at the end of the session. Yeah. So now in your email that you sent to me, you were saying that you're currently trying to simplify your life to provide more space for creativity. So how are you doing that? What sort of things are you doing to get you into that space?
So I did go back and work for Queensland Government for a while, and I'm still doing some work. I was working full-time there until beginning of this year, and I've gone part-time there. So still doing a couple of days a week just to keep that steady, flow of income while I build my business around what I'm really passionate about, which is movement and yoga, for particularly around managing anxiety, finding self-acceptance in who you are, because I think that's using that word again, journey. That's a bit of a journey for a lot of women, is trying to work out who they are, especially now in this next new phase of their life where there is so much opportunity, but it can be a little like, if you've been really much the mother or the career woman or any of those, all of those things, choosing now what it is you want to do as opposed to having to do. And we all still have to pay our bills. There's always that element, but I do think there's a point now where you start to go, actually, what is important? So I really want to be able to work with women around that, and particularly women who are experiencing lack of confidence, self-limiting beliefs. So doing that with the yoga and with drawing on some of my psychology background and sort of the mindset work as well. So doing one-on-one coaching and the yoga at my house here, and workshops. Got a workshop happening on Saturday, so I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah. And how often are you able to do those?
I'm wanting to start doing them regularly, like 6 weekly.
Yeah.
So they'll involve some meditation, a bit of movement, but also a bit of speaking about different topics. So they'll be themed each time. This topic this week is around nurturing yourself. So I wanted to move away from the self-care, sort of hashtag self-care, because that can be wonderful, but it can be a shallow perspective. It's great to get your nails done and your hair done and do all that, but sometimes that's just
so much more, isn't it?
Going a little bit deeper. What does self-care really mean, and how can we bring rituals into our life? Like, I know you love to go walking in the morning in nature and journaling, and those become self-care rituals.
Yes, that's so true. I think we've been sold basically a marketing ploy, isn't it? That self-care is going and going shopping and having a bath on Sunday, and that's it. When you've done those two things, or doing your nails, that's self-care. But it is so much more than that. It's practices, number of practices throughout the day that will embody self-care. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my big dream with all of this next year is to run retreats in.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds fabulous.
Yes. I know, I'm very excited. So obviously Bali is one of the places that is close to my heart, but I also am interested. We've done quite a bit of travel and off to Vietnam again in October. So I'll be scouting around there, and Cambodia to Siem Reap, where Angkor Wat is.
Yes.
So I really want to scope out some places, because for me the retreat is around stepping out of your day-to-day so you can have the time to discover what you value, what's important, doing a bit of yoga, doing a bit of shopping, having a few glasses of champagne if that's your thing, but also connecting with the culture of the places that we're going to, because that, I think, was what really helped me when I started doing the volunteer English teaching. That was my beginning of really immersing myself in a culture that has so much to offer, and it's that experience, that spiritual connection experience, that I love about the idea of going on a retreat in another country.
Yeah, and sometimes just getting away from your own area and exploring somewhere new, it gives you that a completely different insight and mindset as well.
It gives you a different perspective, and I think it also gives you permission not to be the label that you have on yourself. I know when I was over there, I was a number of trips I did on my own for different trainings or the volunteer teaching it. I was on my own. It's almost like no one here knows me. No one has any preconceived conception of me. I can wear tie-dye and dance down the street if I wanted to. Like, no one knows who I am. So I can really reinvent myself or just simply be who I really am. So it gives you that permission that maybe we don't feel we have in our day-to-day.
Yeah, and that's a great thing about travel too, particularly if you're going to a country that doesn't have English as a first language. You're a bit out of your comfort zone. So.
Oh, very.
And that can open up some other opportunities too for your own self-discovery. And that sounds like a great opportunity that you're going into, coming up for you. So that's where you would like to see that and offering that sort of thing more often.
Yes,
right.
definitely.
Brilliant. Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. So, Kim, all that you've learned and experienced, what's one piece of advice that you have for women in the middle of life?
So many.
It's hard just to say one, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. I think there's a balance to be had between being curious and trying lots of different things, and in reminding yourself that none of those things are the answer. So what I mean by that is that we get told there's so many different, like we can do ice baths and green juices and, take mushroom supplements and all those things. And all those things are wonderful, and you should explore and be curious and research whatever you feel called to do. But know that none of those things are the answer to what you're looking for. That comes from within, and it's up to you to try and then choose what works for you, not what other people say will work for you, or not what other people say, this is the golden answer. Just do this breathing practice and all your anxiety will go away. I'm sorry, but it won't. If only it could. But it is about choosing what works for you and then trying to be consistent with that so that it actually creates change, rather than being so fleeting with trying so many different things that we never really bed down and take action on what we've learned.
Yeah, that's great advice. And it's coming up with your own menu of things, isn't it?
Yes.
And there is not a one size fits all approach to this, because we're all so different and unique and different backgrounds and different life experiences. So,
and if something is like ice baths are I think there's a lot of evidence behind ice baths as being really beneficial for many physical and mental challenges. I hate cold water. I'm not doing ice baths.
I hear you, Kim.
I'm not. I've got friends who keep saying, let's do it. And I'm like, no. So it's okay to say no.
You go your hardest, yes.
Even if it's good for you, you don't have to do it.
That's right. Every summer I go, I have to always have a stinking hot day of when I'll go into turn that shower off, cool at the end. And I go, I could do this. I'm going to do this all the way through.
Yes.
And when it drops a few degrees, I go, nah, I'm not going to.
That's just happened to me again this year.
So how have you found the middle of life so far, Kim? Is it something that you're enjoying, this stage of life?
Yes, I think it was more challenging in the perimenopausal phase when I didn't really realise that's what it was, why I was getting
you stumble into it without knowing, don't you?
It never really... wasn't really spoken about much. It's sort of like menopause, but it starts so much earlier and has so many different physiological and mental symptoms that you don't realize. You just think that you're becoming unfocused and moody, and why are you sweating because you're not in menopause, and all these other things. So I think that was quite a challenging phase, because trying to tease out what that was. But now I'm feeling fabulous.
So you're postmenopausal now. When did you reach menopause? What age was that for you?
So about 2 years ago, 54.
Right. Yeah. I'm halfway through. I'm 55 and 55.6 now, and I'm still going, Kim. So I'm looking forward to saying I've reached menopause. I'm now postmenopausal. It's just going forever.
It still has to settle a bit, but it is different, and you know where you're at. Whereas prior, it's like it's kind of all over the place.
Yes, constantly guessing like a teenage girl.
If you don't have good GPs, and if you don't have a good GP, they can just sort of like, well, just take some temazepam or something and get some sleep. Like it's not very helpful.
No. That's right. So you're finding midlife's pretty good so far then, now that the worst of peri's gone and you're you've reached that next level.
I am a little concerned about the wrinkly knees. I think they're a bit of I wasn't prepared for them either.
I'm fine with wrinkles on my knees as long as I don't get any worse with osteoarthritis.
The joys. I think you just have to laugh at all these things, or else you really would just stay curled up under your doona.
We're alive, aren't we? That's the main.
We are.
There are so many women who.
That's why it's so wonderful for podcasts like yours. Yeah, that's why it's so wonderful for podcasts like yours, because I do think we need to. Sometimes it can be isolating if you don't have other friends or feel you can talk about it. But it's lovely to hear stories from other people and go, it's not just me. No,
that's it. It's celebrating what we've got and just recognizing you are not alone. And it can feel really, at sometimes that you're very much alone.
Yes, yeah, especially if you aren't necessarily someone who's had a big friendship group or has a close, or you've moved somewhere where maybe you don't.
Kids have gone, and all of a sudden, there's lots of factors that play into it. So, Kim, what are you most looking forward to in this second half of life?
Stepping away from my government job, and I am very grateful that I've had that, but it does not align with my values and what I want to do in life anymore. And I'm really looking for, in the fairly hopefully short term, being able to step more fully into my creativity with this business and my work, and to write a book. And I have so many ideas. I'm multi-passionate, remember. I have so many ideas that I am just really looking forward to really determining what it is I'm going to chase after next and going for it.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yeah, I've got a mentoring program that I do with women one-on-one as well called Reimagine, because if this is a time of life when you get to that point we've discussed before, we go, what now? What am I going to do? And it's exciting because there is so much, and to give yourself that time and space to be able to think about what direction. So I wish you well in all of this. It sounds like you've got so much that's going to be happening over the next 5, 10, 20 years.
Yes, definitely. It is an exciting time.
It is. It's not done and dusted once you're in your, once you hit your 40s and 50s, it's just beginning, really.
Oh, exactly. And you can make it your own.
You can. My word. Yeah. So, Kim, if you could look into the future, what do you hope 80-year-old Kim is going to say about current day Kim?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for this question. Let me think. So what does 80-year-old Kim say about
current day Kim?
Good on you that you actually decided to chase your dreams, because I know it was scary to step away from the stability of a job that is very stable, well paid, safe. I am so proud of you for chasing your dreams.
Well done. Hey, stepping into that unknown.
Yes.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, Kim, thanks so much for your time today and sharing your life story with us. It's been absolutely fascinating having a yarn to you over these last probably 50 or so minutes. And
wow, that's gone fast. It's been fabulous.
Really fun. Oh, mine were you. We did have a bit of a chat beforehand, so before I hit record. But thank you. I really appreciate the chance we had to talk today. And if people want to follow you on Instagram or head to your website, I'll have all of those links in the show notes, but you can share them here as well.
Great. Well, my website is nice and simple. It's kimadams.au, and I spend most of my time on Instagram at kim.adams.healing, so you can always find me there and see what I'm up to.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks so much for your time today, Kim.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favourite podcast app to keep spreading these empowering messages. Please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another redefining midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.